So I guess for me, my introduction to following true crime cases on YouTube was through Kendall Ray's channel. Now, she's a different form of YouTuber. She doesn't cover ongoing cases that much. Mostly she does long form videos where she will do a documentary style video on a case, and the majority of the cases she covers are cases that have been resolved, where a person has been convicted, and hopefully most of the time there is a resolution. However, back in September of 2019, she did a video on a case that was only a few years old, and she interviewed a family member connected to that case. And that was actually the Delphi case. That was when I first came across a very, very young Kelsey German, and I was introduced to the Delphi case. So I was a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of following that case, but way ahead of a lot of people, I must admit. And while I did continue to follow mostly Kendall Ray's content, I did start delving into cases that were ongoing cases like Delphi. I became very heavily invested in the Delphi case, and I think it was there that my interest in ongoing cases was sparked. Go down the road 2 years, and August 21, I came across this brand new channel, and she was covering the Gabby Petito case, and that brand new channel was Grizzly True Crime. She had less than 1,000 subscribers, and she had been doing a bit of content on Chris Watts, but then the Gabby Petito case blew wide open and she was covering it, and I saw her channel just explode overnight, and it was impressive. And at that time, there was a lot of content creators suddenly came on board who had not covered any content before, but who were just drawn in by Gabby's case and were covering Gabby's case. And that's where I started to see the differences in how people covered cases. That's when I first came across Joseph Morris, who I spoke about in the early days of this case, because he pulled some pretty dirty stunts with the Gabby Petito case, just for the sake of clicks and views. And he actually went on to continue doing this in other cases, in Kylie Rodney with the Idaho 4 case. I actually was really surprised when I saw him covering this case, because I thought after what he did with the Idaho 4 case that he had gone, that his channel was no longer around. But it turns out that when you're that sort of person, you just really don't care what sort of damage you are doing. So where am I going with this? Well, I modelled, when I decided to start my channel, I modelled it on the likes of Grizzly True Crime, Plunder True Crime, Paula Mooney, other content creators which aren't really doing much now, but we're coming at it from a perspective of making sure that they were doing it ethically, that they were being responsible with how they were sharing cases. Now, with the Gabby Petito case, like I said, there was Joseph Morris. He was an outlier. He played by his own rules. Got a lot of views, but wasn't really doing a lot for the case, because he was doing stuff like he actually found a video on someone's Instagram and they were out fishing, and he took a 2-second clip from that video and he posted it claiming that Brian Laundrie had gone live on his Instagram momentarily. And this went almost viral. And it turned out this came from Instagram. I think it was Mel looked at it and went, hey, this is complete utter BS. And this was a really solid reminder for content creators to make sure that they were showing receipts. There was a woman who lived further down in Florida from where Gabby and Brian used to live, who rang into a YouTube channel, and I can't remember what channel it was, and made claims that she was Brian's ex-girlfriend and that she knew exactly what his parents would have done in terms of that they were hiding him. I think she even suggested that she had spoken to him since he went into hiding. And she came out with this story that was so credible. Until, of course, you thought it through and realised that everything she said was public information. And then she just threw in a little bit here and there to convince people that she was genuine. And of course it came out afterwards that she was a complete utter liar, because if you followed the Gabby Petito case, you will know that while this woman was interacting with content creators and telling them that she knew where Brian was, she knew what the plan had been between him and his parents. It turns out he had been deceased. He had gone into a park near his parents' place and had basically ended himself many weeks before she came out making all these claims. But in the meantime, a lot of content creators who didn't really worry about receipts had grabbed her story and ran with it. So let's jump ahead to the Kylie Rodney case, because that's where I'm headed in terms of what I want to talk about with this video. That also had some interesting characters come out of the woodwork. I mentioned in a previous video a guy named Ronnie, and he was nicknamed Red Flag Ronnie because there was just all this confusion over who this guy was, because it appeared that there may have been several accounts who were coming out as this Ronnie guy. He was meant to be black, but one of the accounts, he actually looked like a white guy. He was driving to ask about helping with the search, and while you didn't see him, you could see his leg, and it looked white. Anyway, again, this guy came forward. He did a call in to a channel called Mel. And again, he gave all these details about this party that Kylie had allegedly been at, claiming that his two cousins had been there, and giving a story about what they witnessed in relation to Kylie, etc., etc. Still no receipts. Mel then basically put that into a separate video from his very long live stream and put it out as a short video, which caused a lot of drama and a lot of negativity towards his channel, because it was something that wasn't, at that point in time, wasn't accepted by most channels, because most channels were still making the effort to produce receipts. And then around the same time that this was happening, a musician from Nashville who was quite popular, I'd never heard of him, but I think apparently in like the country music scene he's quite big, and he suddenly got interested in Kylie's case and decided that he was going to take up true crime, and he was going to start doing his little bit talking about Kylie's case. And you're going to see more about that in this video a little way down the track, because things went completely out of control with him. And he is currently still in the process of going through a civil suit with the father and the grandfather of Kylie Rodney because of allegations that he was making online. And that is the main thing that I'm wanting to address here, because I know a lot of people have this belief that, well, hey, you know, if a YouTuber's coming out and they're sharing information that they've got from somewhere without receipts, well, aren't they at least putting the case out there? Aren't they at least sharing the case? And maybe it's going to develop new leads for the case. Well, my experience has been that from all the cases I've seen, the people that have come out with these grand stories that they have not produced receipts for usually are spouting BS, and quite often they are causing damage to the case. Now, you may want to zoom in if you want to actually read this for yourself, but this appeared on Facebook yesterday, I think it was. It was a post from Belinda Gray talking about similar things to what I'm talking about here. She said, "I've watched the story of my grandchildren unfold on social media, discussing every aspect of what has been said, proven and shared. In the beginning, everything that came out was discussed. That was all families connected to the children, except maybe the mother's side. Nothing came out from her, or from her side. Please Bring Me Home did their first search, and slowly thereafter we started getting further insight into her side. Little by little more info started creeping out and friends started speaking publicly. The moral compass of social media started to shift. They no longer wanted to examine every detail of what's being put out. Now it's more about what news outlets release, demanding proof, receipts and verification. Is this a step in the right direction, taking accountability for your content? Will it be for only this case or future cases as well? Only time will tell." Now, Charmaine has done a really good response to that, and I'll come to that in just a moment. But I did want to address this because this is an interesting question that she has posed. She seems to believe that the moral compass of social media started to shift and that people were not examining every detail of what's being put out, and people were more interested in what was being publicly released, demanding proof, receipts and verification. Now, Belinda's coming at this from the perspective of someone who has not followed other cases. So all she's seeing is what has happened with this case. And what we saw with this case at the very beginning was something that, for me, was extremely confronting because it's not something that I have seen in other cases. And that is that we had people commenting in chats of people's videos, people commenting on Facebook who were connected to the case. When people started talking about all these messages from Daniel, my reaction at first was, oh, this is just like all the other cases I have covered where you get these kooks come out of the woodwork pretending to be someone they're not. So I ignored it because my approach has always been to go with solid factual information. When I covered the Madeline Soto case, I steered clear of the rumours and the gossip. And with that case, thankfully, Paula Mooney was also covering that case, and she worked really, really hard to get a lot of FOIA documents. In Florida, it is so much easier to get Freedom of Information documents. They have a particular law there, which means that basically if you ask for it, they've pretty much got to give it to you, unless it is something that is very, very crucial. They can't just pull the line of, we don't want to damage the investigation. They've got to have a good reason for not releasing that FOIA information. So with the Madeline Soto case, it was about looking at all the recorded interviews with Stefan, with Jen Soto, looking at news reports, looking at news media interviews that Stefan and Jen did. And it was only towards the end, when Stefan was approaching the time of his trial, that things started going off the rails, and you had two female content creators suddenly swooning over Stefan Stearns, one trying to get to him through his parents. So she started communicating with his parents and putting out some pretty vicious rumours about the mother of Madeline Soto. Now, yes, I agree, Jen Soto should be held accountable for her role in what happened to Maddie. But this content creator was putting out a lot of misinformation coming directly from the mother of Stefan Stearns, such as trying to claim that Stefan was taking the fall for Jen Soto and that he was innocent. And this content creator was encouraging that. Another content creator was communicating directly with Stefan Stearns, but lying to her subscribers, and telling them that these emails were being forwarded to her from a girl called Jessica who was communicating with him. And things just started getting really icky at that point in time. And that was the first time I've seen that sort of behaviour from content creators, where it just seemed to be going off the rails. So for me, seeing all this stuff coming out at the beginning of this case, where people were claiming that they had messages from Daniel, where people were claiming that they had messages from Malaya, I was extremely cynical. And I didn't discuss them because it wasn't my approach. I am that channel that relies on proof, receipts, and verification, because that is what you normally see from content creators on YouTube. It's normally only a small handful of content creators who are in it for clicks and views and aren't really worried about the ethics, who don't worry about receipts and are more interested in how much they can earn off a case. So for me, if anything, I have loosened up a little bit while I've been covering this case. And I wonder if it was the wrong choice. Yes, I've still made sure that I've had receipts for everything, but I have found myself communicating with people connected to the case behind the scenes, which is something that I normally would not do because it can become messy. You can have issues with people trying to push a narrative onto you where basically they're trying to use their connection to the case to convince you to share things their way. There was another case that I covered. I think I probably only did 1 or 2 videos on it, and one of the people connected to the family in that case she was commenting on some of my videos. I was commenting on posts that she was making that led to her basically essentially making demands of how she wanted content creators to cover that case. And for me, that was it. I'm like, I'm not touching this case now until it goes to trial, and then I will come back and I will look at it. But with this case, I have communicated with people behind the scenes. Good or bad, I don't know. But the thing where I would say that I feel like I have taken a step back is that I was talking or discussing some of the text messages that were being shared, some of the chat comments and things that were being shared by Daniel, by people connected with Malaya, or by Malaya. And yes, I was pulling out receipts, But over time, we've learnt that they're all lying. So maybe I was right at the beginning to be ignoring comments from Daniel, because we've become so confused with this case, because people have jumped in and basically accepted comments and messages from all manner of people who either have a connection to this case that is proven or claim to have a connection to this case. And honestly, we've reached a point where nobody knows what the truth is anymore. So for me, I feel like I've done the opposite of this moral shift that Belinda has been talking about, and actually loosened up a bit in terms of what I've accepted from people connected to the case. As for other content creators, I feel that they have come into this seeing the way that Sunny and Charmaine approached the case, not really understanding where they were coming from in the way they were approaching the case, not understanding the thought processes behind what they were doing, and have decided that it was just carte blanche and that you could just put any content out without receipts. So for me, I'm not seeing this moral compass shifting that Belinda is talking about. I'm actually seeing it shift the other way. There are content creators who are putting out information that isn't verifiable, putting out information without providing receipts. And that is problematic, and I will get back to that. So Belinda's question, is this a step in the right direction, taking accountability for your content? Yes, I believe it is. When people do not take accountability for their content, all manner of problems arise. When people who follow true crime cases come across a new channel that's covering a case they have not encountered before, then that is the thing that can keep a case moving. Because what you see, and you saw this with the Nancy Guthrie case, that was suddenly a big case, and you had probably about 3/4 of the content creators completely stop covering Jack and Lily and jump onto the Nancy Guthrie case. Now, it seems that they have, for the most part, come back to covering it, but that's unusual. What you usually see is when content creators jump onto another case, they jump onto that case and then they keep moving on. So it is unusual to see content creators come back. But the thing is, audiences do that too. So for me, if I were watching Paula's channel right now, she's not covering this case. I was following her when she was covering the Maddie Soto case, but she's covering a lot of other cases now. If I was just a subscriber and I was loyal to Paula, then I may see this case, follow it once or twice with other channels, and then go back to what Paula is covering. But you will also get people who may get heavily invested in this case until something new comes along, like the Nancy Guthrie case, and they are going to become heavily invested in that. And over time, the videos for Jack and Lily are not going to show up in their algorithm, and they're not going to come back to watching it. The only way you're going to keep this case moving online is by bringing in a new audience, bringing in more people who are interested in the case. This is why when I get to the end of my videos, I talk about trying to get them into the algorithm, because there is always going to be new cases that pop up that people get drawn to and they move away from it. We saw this with the Kylie Rodney case. That's when I created my channel, because that was not long after the Idaho 4 case broke wide open. And all of a sudden, the many, many channels that have been covering Kylie's case all jumped onto covering the Idaho 4, and Kylie's case almost got buried. And there was still so much to talk about, and we're still trying to get justice for her. And a lot of the audience went with them. So what am I saying here? There are going to be people who are going to reach a point where they're going to say, okay, well, there is this new case that's got a lot more happening. I'm going to follow that. And they're going to forget about Lily and Jack. Meanwhile, there are going to be other people who will see this in the algorithm, and they might watch a video to try and get a feel for the case. And if they're watching a video and all it is people spreading rumours and gossip without receipts, you're going to grab very few additional subscribers, additional followers. And this case is going to become another one of those forgotten cases that just gets spoken about occasionally by content creators when there's a little bit of news that comes out from the media. Because without an audience, it's hard to continue covering a case. So for me, in terms of taking accountability for my content, will it be only this case or future cases? I have always taken accountability for my content. You can go back over every case that I have covered, and I always produce receipts. I found this case very different. Like I said, normally I would be reluctant to share text messages and things from people who are essentially suspects in the case, because I understand how all this works. I've followed enough cases, I've covered enough cases to see how people try to control the narrative. But I guess the difference here is that these are verified as coming from those particular individuals. And when it is someone who is direct family, or if it is directly from Daniel or Malaya, then yes, it's worth looking at. But the problem I'm seeing is that it has become so commonplace with this case that people take everything as gospel. And honestly, people give you a bit of information and they've got no idea where it came from. And the problem there is that there is a lot of AI channels who are putting out false information. And people are taking information that's come on these AI channels, shared it, and other people have just continued to share it, and it's just turning into a complete joke. Anyway, I'm going to go through Charmaine's response because I think this is a really good response, and I think this nails it. I have a lot to say about this topic, though I'll keep it as short as I can. At the beginning of this case, Sunny and I wanted to put every bit of information out to the viewers in hopes that someone would see it. Know something, generate tips, and all the other reasons we say all the time. We've always tried to put out factual information, and even if sometimes we could not show proof, we felt that we vetting it enough based on what we were able to look into. None of that has changed. That's where I disagree a little bit. I always make sure I can verify information that I'm putting out. I like to double check. I like to be able to find additional sources. I like to be able to cross check. A classic example is the Madeline Soto case again, and bear with me because I covered this case from the start right through up until when he pled in court. But one of the things that was put out at one point in time by a content creator was this information claiming that Jennifer Soto had gotten, I think it was something like $84,000 in COVID loans, that she had created a fake business, got $84,000 in COVID loans that she never had to pay back. And this was something that grew legs, and it became something that was repeatedly brought up. It was something that was commented on my channel so often. It was mentioned on Facebook. It was something that was starting to be taken as gospel. And this came from a content creator basically searching these COVID loans and seeing the name Jen Soto and adding it all up and going, wow, she got $84,000 worth of loans. Now, that was only one page that she looked at. I went into the database and I looked at that page, but then I cross-checked and I actually looked deeper into each of these Jennifer Sotos. And it turned out that not one of those Jennifer Sotos even lived in Florida. Not one of those Jennifer Sotos was the Jennifer Soto connected to the Madeline Soto case. I just did that extra checking and was able to make sure what the actual situation was and put information out to correct this misinformation. Now, that content creator is really lucky that she hasn't faced a major lawsuit, because she was encouraging her subscribers to actually report these scam loans. She was telling them, she actually gave them the web address to go to report these fraudulent loans, because she was telling them they were fraudulent loans created by this Jennifer Soto, who was the mother of Madeline Soto. So quite likely there's a lot of Jennifer Sotos around America who were suddenly being audited over these loans that they had genuinely taken out. Not only that, but she could have faced a lawsuit from Jen Soto, like the mother Jennifer Soto, for sharing that information. So, yes, being kind of sure, thinking you've vetted it enough, is more than what I'm seeing right now from some channels. But I like to have solid proof. I like to make sure that I have cross-checked what I'm putting out. But I'll keep going with what Charmaine is saying here. None of that has changed. What has changed are the people providing the information. I've always given the benefit of the doubt to every person who wanted to talk. The issue became that almost every time I put something out to my viewers, others would message me to tell me that the info was wrong or inaccurate. And I've had exactly the same thing with this case, where I've got information from one source where there's text messages from like Daniel or something that I've shared, or something along those lines, or I've played audio from someone and then someone else has contacted me and said, no, that is wrong. So I know exactly where she's coming from. So Charmaine's like, the bottom line is I don't know what is true or false. These teams or sides are frustrating. Everyone had the benefit of the doubt until recently. Now I assume they are all lying to protect one side or the other. You tell me how to fairly cover the case when this is happening. Not just now and then, but every single time. As for any and all other cases, I've yet to cover a case on my podcast with Sunny, or now my own channel, where the families are either not speaking, not consistent, not asking for help to find two missing children, straight up lying, attacking, you name it. This case is unique in that sense. I have never seen so many people coming out of the woodwork on both sides trying to steer the narrative. So many people forming alliances with content creators in the background to try and influence those content creators to put out their version of the information. It is not something that you see in cases normally. So, going back to Charmaine. So no, not all cases will end up being covered this way. Believe it or not, the majority of us want to get this right. We do not want to put false information out. But when the sources are not trustworthy, it leaves us two options. Prove what you say or stop sharing information with YouTubers. This is just my opinion and how I see things. I'll keep talking about the crap that goes on, but until the RCMP come with information or arrests, I will not be entertaining any sources who tell me things but then ask me not to share it. I have a YouTube channel, I share information just how I see it. So I think she's gone a bit off track there in terms of, I get where she's coming from. These people who are saying, I've got this information but don't share it. Because honestly, why are you going to a content creator in the first place? I get that. But in terms of putting information out because you've got it, no. I get a lot of information brought to me that I cannot verify. Maybe I can verify it through the individual that's contacted me, but unless I can cross-check it, if someone sends me like a text message, I'm going to look at that closely to make sure it's real, for starters. If someone sends me a screenshot from Facebook, I'm going to go find that for myself. Because I've seen all this sort of stupidity go on with other cases where people are sharing things that have been made up. And the problem is, this is coming from both sides. And the thing that I find most amazing at this point in time is that there are countless people who are communicating with this Anita woman, this friend of Cindy's, who's got all these stories to tell. And she's so much like people I've seen in so many other cases who've basically studied the case really well. Now, she might have some background knowledge, but I think that there is a lot that's being added in here. I think she's got an agenda. I have, just from the small amount of things that I've heard, spotted 4 or 5 outright lies from this woman. And yet there are multiple content creators who are putting out content based on what she is telling them. Now, as things stand currently, it would be the people like Durwood and Anita who would be opening themselves up for legal ramifications for intentionally spreading false information. Not so much the content creators. But it seems, based on various cases, that this could be coming down the track. This could be something that comes about where content creators who don't take responsibility for their content, who don't take accountability, and who don't take the time to check, could find themselves in hot water legally. Now, when it comes to setting legal precedents, in terms of landmark cases, these are nearly always built from things that have a great deal of public attention. So a case like this, where there is so much public attention, is the sort of case that you could see a lawyer sinking their teeth into and taking on a case that is going to be a landmark case, something that is going to create a new precedent in terms of civil action. We have content creators who are sharing unverified information, which is essentially nothing more than rumours. It doesn't matter if a person knows someone connected to that case. That doesn't mean that they are telling you the truth. And some of these rumours are damaging for people's reputations. People who are not directly linked to the disappearance of Lily and Jack, for starters. I don't need to be discussing Hayden Murray's background on my channel, because that's not relevant in terms of Lily and Jack. And then some of the rumours I've heard relating to both sides, to Malaya's family and Daniel's family. Now, I don't know, maybe Mike Darman has spoken about some of this stuff on his channel, but some of it, you could be facing a major lawsuit if you are putting that sort of information out there online. Whether or not it's truthful or not, it's the sort of stuff that it is a privacy violation. You could even lose your YouTube channel for that, but you could also wind up in court. I'm not going to say what these things are, these allegations are, but needless to say, they're not necessary. They're not verified, but even if they were verified, they are stepping over into privacy violations. So, for the next part of this video, I'm going to go through a few different cases that have occurred in the recent years, just to give you some idea of the scope of what I'm talking about. Now, right now, it's my impression that a lot of judges aren't really sure where to go with these sorts of cases. And there has to be a balance, because content creators should still be allowed to share opinions online, should still be allowed to do analyses of things people have said, but there definitely needs to be a line drawn in the sand. So let's have a look at a few different cases.
3-year-old Dylan Ehlers' disappearance in 2020 instantly sparked despair and concern amongst the public, as many took to social media to speculate on what could have happened to the boy who had seemingly vanished mere seconds of being left alone in his grandmother's yard. But online theories quickly spiraled into unproven information, some users going as far as accusing his parents of killing their child. Ehlers' parents have never been charged in their son's disappearance and filed a civil case against 2 Facebook users that ended in a court settlement.
With respect to the spread of misinformation, inaccurate information, and speculation, I just want to say that's harmful. It's harmful to the families and communities who are trying to work their way through a traumatic event. And so I really want to encourage people to be kind.
There's a lot of information and the police have to follow up on every lead. But when a lot of it ends up being rumors, it's taking away from valid calls that they're getting and valid information that they would like to follow up on.
And the average social media sleuth could be risking far more than a slap on the wrist.
If it rises to the level of criminal harassment or threats, the police will certainly get involved and there can be criminal charges laid. On a civil side, the victims of these bullying posts do have some avenue to get justice. So they can file an action in Supreme Court for a cyber protection order, and a judge can order the people that are posting to stop, to take down posts, to remove groups from online, and even to the extent that, depending on the harm that is done, damages can be awarded against the offending party.
Now, it's important to note here that, a lot of what they've said doesn't necessarily apply in this case, but what needs to be noted here is that the sort of thing that a lot of us are doing, where we are watching a video of Daniel doing an interview and sharing our thoughts based on what he said, that is well and truly, that is fine. That is us basically sharing an opinion online. But when people start going outside of that and, for example, sharing rumours about Hayden Murray Smith that have come from a person who just seems to like sharing information with anyone who will listen to them, then those people who are sharing those rumours online are opening themselves up for legal consequences. They are invading his privacy, and if there is no truth in those, then they are also basically up for some serious legal consequences. In terms of libel, if a content creator believes that the information they've been told is truthful, then essentially they can't be done for libel. But here's where our landmark cases come in. I can see a situation coming into play in the near future where content creators are going to be held accountable for sharing unfounded rumours that they have gotten from a third party, for not doing the responsible thing of actually verifying what they put out, because it is still damaging to people. And yes, people like Durwood and Anita, if it's been proven that they are intentionally spreading these malicious rumours, knowing them to be not true, then they can be in trouble legally. But the deal here is that it is becoming more common to see cases against content creators for something that they have done that has been perhaps a little less than ethical. And I think we are going to start seeing landmark cases coming out. And like I said, landmark cases always come from high profile cases, things that are going to get public attention, because you're only going to be able to create new precedents to change the law in that way if there is public support for what you are trying to do. And to get that, it has to come from a high profile case.
Turning now to Tennessee, where a hearing took place on Thursday in the case of missing teen Sebastian Rogers. The 15-year-old was last seen at his mother's home in Tennessee back in February. Sebastian, who has autism, disappeared overnight, leaving his shoes behind. The search has gone national, with some YouTubers getting involved, including Andra Griffin, a.k.a. Bullhorn Betty. In July, Sebastian's mother, Katie Proudfoot, filed a protection order against Bullhorn Betty, accusing her of harassment. The following month, Bullhorn Betty was arrested for violating the restraining order. Yesterday, the judge granted a new protection order against Andra Griffin.
Now, again, this doesn't connect directly to what is going on here, but in one sense it does. Now, just a bit of background on Bullhorn Betty. Her origins, I guess you could say, go back to the Gabby Petito case. So, probably there's a lot of you who are not familiar with Gabby's case. She went off on a road trip with her fiancé, Brian. They left Florida in a vehicle that they had fitted out. Gabby had worked her butt off to buy that vehicle. They fitted it out to travel around America in. And they had left Florida, they had been travelling. Gabby wanted to have her own travel blog on YouTube. And everything went silent between Gabby and her parents. And they contacted Brian's parents to find out if they had heard from Brian and Gabby, and they discovered that Brian had returned home in Gabby's vehicle. And what went on from there was horrible for her family, because they just wanted to know where their daughter was. And Brian had returned to Florida with her vehicle. He wasn't giving answers. His family weren't giving answers. And Gabby's family had no idea where she was. There was no connection from her phone. They didn't even know where she had last been. And it was pretty much a lockdown kind of situation. And you had one family that was publicly pleading for answers. They just wanted to know where their daughter was. While Brian's family were holed up in their home, refusing to give any answers as to where Gabby was, as to what happened, as to why the heck Brian had driven halfway across the country in Gabby's vehicle, and where the heck was Gabby. And you got a massive crowd of people who started regularly turning up outside their house and with signs and calling out and wanting to know where Gabby was. And this is where Andrea Griffin got her beginning. She turned up with a bullhorn, with a loudspeaker, one of those, big things you yell through, and she was basically harassing them through that. And because there was so much support for Gabby's family, there was so much anger over what this family were doing to Gabby's family. She got given a lot of positive feedback over what she was doing. People didn't step back and consider that actually this is still, when we have no solid evidence of what the situation is here, this is harassment. But she got encouraged by that, and she just went on and got worse. And with Sebastian's case, she became quite close with Sebastian's biological father. It is my understanding. I haven't followed the case super closely, so those of you who follow Justin will probably correct me if I'm making mistakes here. But it is my understanding that she kind of got in close, made connections with Sebastian's father, and felt encouraged because of that to then start harassing Sebastian's mother and stepfather, hence going to court. Now, she ended up, I think the charges ended up being dropped, but again, that was a situation where I just think the judge hadn't come across a case like this and didn't know where to go with it. But in a different courtroom with a different judge, a case like that could progress. And we have content creators who are covering this case, who are aligning themselves with family members and quite obviously coming out in a way that is attacking people from the other families. I mean, right now we're seeing this major hate campaign against Cindy. There's a lot of negativity coming out, and it's coming from this Anita who's supposed to be Cindy's best friend or something. And content creators are listening to what she's saying and putting that information out there. They could be opening themselves up for legal consequences. Now, the next one that I'm going to talk about, in terms of the reasoning, what this guy was doing, that doesn't necessarily connect with this case, but the consequences do, and I think that is what is significant here, because this is a civil case, meaning that there is more scope for landmark cases when you are doing a civil case, when you're not looking at criminal legislation. Because with a civil case, if you can claim damages, if you can claim a psychological impact, significant psychological impact, then you've got a case that you can take to court. And that is what has happened here with Ryan Upchurch. So I'm going to dig into this one a little bit, because this one is an eye-opener.
To those of you who already know me, what up, skins? To those of y'all that don't know me, how's it going? If you're coming here from the true crime side of YouTube, I'll have you know that like 50% of the true crime males don't like me. It's probably because I'm cooler than them. I'm also not one of those people who's like, hey, there's a missing person, also GoFundMe below for me. I know a lot of you true crime people think you're fucking Inspector Gadget because you can read where they went missing from, the age, the height, and the weight. I'd love to break it to you, and I am. You're not. And guess what? I'm not either. But in the past, I've gave plausible, realistic scenarios that other people have not given, which is why people watch my videos when I talk about this stuff, and which is why a lot of these other true crime people are like, boo, stop, you can't do this. You're a singer. Yeah, well, you know, at least I don't claim I'm talking to the spirit of a dead missing person and then they end up not missing and also not dead. I've already seen some ridiculous theories about this that are just like stupid.
So as you can see, first of all, Ryan doesn't consider himself to be a true crime YouTuber. He was just covering Kylie Rodney's case. He is a musician. If you search him up on YouTube, he's got 2 separate channels, I think. His music has made him a lot of money. He's in Nashville. He puts out like country music, I think it is. I've not really listened to his music. And he's not bad off in terms of wealth. Now, while Kylie was missing, he offered up a Hellcat, which is a car. I didn't know that because we don't have them in Australia. And that Hellcat was worth something like about $100,000. And he offered that up for any information that would help find Kylie. And he actually honoured that. After Kylie was found, the group that found her, that was Adventures with Purpose, he gave $100,000 to the founder, Jared Lysek, and he gave the Hellcat to the team leader, Doug Bishop. People were upset about that because it was actually Nick Rinn, who was the diver who went down and found Kylie's vehicle. And in fact, he was the one who found her vehicle on the reservoir because they went off in 2 separate teams, and Nick was the one who found her vehicle on the sonar. So people were upset that the vehicle was given to Doug Bishop as opposed to given to Nick Rinn. But Ryan came into it with the belief that he didn't have to do things the same way as other content creators because he wasn't a true crime creator. He was Ryan Upchurch. And of course he came with his own posse of followers who were quite happy to cheer him on and quite happy to do content based on his content, which just gave more encouragement to what he was doing. And some of his choices were beyond questionable. So I'm going to play a news clip for you to show you where things ended up.
Crime podcasts and YouTube channels, they've really exploded in popularity in the past several years. But is there a limit to what people can and cannot say in discussing theories around crimes?
WSMV4 investigative reporter Stacey Cameron looked into a federal lawsuit facing a Nashville YouTube star and reveals how it could shape the way crimes are discussed.
Need you to be looking out for Kylie and Kylie's car.
When 16-year-old Kylie Rodney vanished after attending a party in August of 2022, her mother's desperate plea for help.
My head is all over the place and I'm terrified.
Turned the search for her daughter into an international story. But the news took a tragic turn.
A heartbreaking end to the more than 2-week-long search.
When investigators in California determined she accidentally drowned after driving her car into a lake the night she went missing. But according to attorney Chris Smith,
they're still obviously grieving.
Rodney's death was just the beginning of her family's pain because true crime conspiracy videos
show me real proof of Kylie Rodney existing,
like this one, posted by Nashville YouTube star Ryan Upchurch, took the case viral. And Smith says when Upchurch told his 3 million followers that the Rodneys faked everything to make money on GoFundMe,
it's a scam.
The family hired him to sue Upchurch for defamation, claiming his videos caused mental and psychological damage.
Do you think there's an incentive for people to publish these types of videos?
Absolutely. If that video goes viral, then you get subscribers, you get clicks, and you might get money.
Upchurch isn't the only person sued for posting controversial videos about real crimes. Earlier this year, TikTok psychic Ashley Gillard was sued for claiming a University of Idaho professor ordered the killing of 4 students. And InfoWars founder Alex Jones got hit with multiple suits for saying the Sandy Hook Elementary massacre was a hoax. But when it comes to videos like Upchurch's,
can the companies that offer the platform be held liable?
Generally, no.
Vanderbilt law professor Jennifer Safstrom says companies like YouTube can't be sued because they're not the ones talking. And to win in court, Safstrom says you basically need to prove the person posting knew they were lying, not just sharing what they think about a high-profile crime.
Is someone's opinion protected from a defamation lawsuit?
Absolutely.
Now, I will say Ryan definitely went too far, but I need to point out here that there is zero evidence that Kylie actually did drive herself into that reservoir. There is zero evidence that she drowned, and this is something I'll be covering down the track. I'm working on a series talking about Kylie's case. There's a lot of evidence that would suggest that Kylie did not drive herself into that reservoir and that she did not drown. But as for any evidence that she did in fact drive into the reservoir, zero, none. Other than what I would consider to be extremely questionable fire cam footage, and that's not something that I'll get into here, but definitely questionable. So on that side of things, there were a lot of people asking questions, but Ryan went to the extreme and decided to claim that Kylie never existed. He actually even named a girl who had been at a completely different party and claimed that she was a stand-in for Kylie or something ridiculous like that. He also made these allegations about the GoFundMe. Now, here's the thing with the GoFundMe, and I think when this goes to court, I think he's got a fairly solid case, although the issue there is that it doesn't come back to Kylie's father and grandfather, but rather it comes back to Kylie's mother and a friend of Kylie's mother, because what happened with the GoFundMe was that when Kylie first went missing, a friend of her mother set up a GoFundMe to raise money to increase the reward. And it was very explicitly worded that that's what it was for. And then on the 15th of August, so about 10 days after Kylie went missing, just short of 10 days after Kylie went missing, the group Adventures with Purpose announced that they were going to come and join the search for Kylie. And they are, you probably haven't heard of them because there was a lot of scandal after this relating to the founder, and the channel's still out there, but most people have stopped supporting it. They announced they were going to come and help look for Kylie. They are a search team that specialise in searching for vehicles and people underwater. straight after their announcement that they were coming to help search for Kylie, and they were already well known at that point in time because by that time they had already found something like 22, 23 missing people who had been missing for quite some time. And people who, a lot of those were areas where, we're talking about cases that were 10 or 15 years old where the technology had not been in existence previously, and they'd gone in with their technology and found the missing person. And what happened after their announcement was that the GoFundMe was changed, and it was changed from being there to increase the reward money. Instead, it was changed to, the wording was changed that it was there to support Kylie's family. And of course, the recipient of the GoFundMe money was the mother. This is actually against the GoFundMe rules, and I know a lot of people put in complaints, so I don't know if the GoFundMe was ever paid out. But so in terms of that, Ryan was well within his rights to claim that the GoFundMe was a bit of a scam, but not in the way that he was claiming. So there's this massive lawsuit against Ryan. Now, in this instance, because Ryan is quite well off, this lawsuit is for quite a lot of money. But if Kylie's father and grandfather win this lawsuit, this could change the whole landscape in terms of true crime, because it is going to mean that people really do need to start producing receipts for what they share online. Now, if we're looking at this situation with, for example, Mike Darman, who is putting out a lot of content right now that is purely based on the rumours that Anita has shared with him. Currently, the way the laws exist, he is protected legally from any defamation suits because he appears to believe what he is putting out there. But he's not gotten any receipts for this. He's not tried to find out if it is truthful. And this is where I think we could see people trying to create landmark cases. And like I said, this is a high-profile missing persons case. So I could imagine that there would be lawyers out there who would want to sink their teeth into something like this. If Cindy, for example, wanted to take legal action against a content creator putting out all these allegations that are being made by Anita without checking their content. So while currently the existing laws would essentially protect Mike from spreading these rumours, there is always a scope for landmark cases. And in the area of social media, this is a new area in terms of legal cases. This is something that didn't exist 20 odd years ago. So this is something where we are seeing more and more cases coming out, and at the moment the law doesn't really fit what is happening. So sooner or later there's going to come a point where we are going to start seeing landmark cases happening, where lawyers are going to use these cases to try and reshape the laws to provide better protection for people when it comes to social media. Now you have this new Canadian law that looks like coming through, and while that does not apply to anything I'm discussing here in this video, it does show that there is a increasing awareness of the issues of online bullying, of online harassment, of people slandering people online. But at the end of the day, regardless of what laws exist or what cases are currently in the process of going through or have been through, regardless of any of that side of it, the legalities, what's happened to our sense of ethics? I, for one, don't want to be sharing rumours about Cindy Murray or Hayden Murray Smith and find out down the track that they're not truthful, and particularly in Cindy's case, a grandmother whose 2 grandchildren are missing. I don't want to be that person that is re-victimising her by spreading rumours. Now, I made a comment to a few people when we had Genesis's case come out and break open that I could quite easily create bingo cards for all my channel members that basically when we come to a new case they could see if they could get bingo, because there are so many things that repeatedly come up with cases. And it does appear to me that we could actually put this Anita woman, or as AB says, Annette or Amanda, or who knows how many other versions of her name he's tried. But my thoughts are, from what I've seen, that she could fit into one of the categories, and this is the category of the well-researched fraud, in that I don't believe that everything that she is telling people is truthful, and I believe she is playing a very careful game of manipulation with a very large number of people. Now, another bingo square that she could fit into quite easily is someone who fits within the 3 degrees of separation. In her instance, she is allegedly friends with Wade and Cindy, so that basically is about 2 degrees separation from Malaya. That said, that bingo square's already been filled by Durwood, so probably doesn't really qualify for that square. Of course, Durwood would also have his own special square of someone using a fake name. Now, I had intended for this video to be a single video, but having completed the entire video, it comes up to close to 3 hours. So I'm going to split the video here. I think this is a logical place to stop, because the next part actually is a major expose of this Anita person. I think after you hear the things that I have learned from researching this woman, you might not be quite so ready to believe all the information that is coming out from her. Now, given that at this point this video is already nearly an hour and a quarter long, I'm not going to go into depth in terms of exactly what is contained in tomorrow's video when I look at that side of things, but it's certainly something that is an eye-opener. So I am going to finish there, and hopefully you will join me tomorrow for the second instalment of, I guess it's now a series as opposed to just being a single video. So on that note, please, if you're new to my channel, please subscribe if you like what you hear. Also, please hit that like button. Let's get this out into the algorithm. And also, please leave a comment below. I know there's been a lot discussed already here, but I would be very interested to hear your thoughts and opinions. So on that note, thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.